Michael Chen didn't believe in fate. After 23 years working as a field engineer for wildlife conservation projects across East Africa, he'd learned that the wilderness operated on brutal mathematics, not miracles. Predators ate prey, the strong survived, the weak didn't. Simple. But on a Thursday morning in September, those calculations shattered in exactly 17 seconds. Michael was driving the perimeter fence line of the Ngorongoro Conservation Area, checking solar panels that powered the anti-poaching sensors, when he saw the vultures. 4 of them, circling low. Too low. Something was dying. Michael pulled his Land Cruiser off the dirt track and grabbed his binoculars. Through the lens, he saw her, an adult lioness, lying on her side in a clearing 50 meters from the fence. Not moving. Michael's first thought was poisoning. Poachers had been using tainted meat to kill predators in retaliation for livestock losses. His second thought was protocol. Document, report, do not approach. But then she moved, just slightly. Her head lifted maybe 2 inches off the ground, then dropped back down. Still alive. Michael grabbed his radio. "Base, this is Chen at grid 479. I have a downed lioness, possible poisoning, requesting veterinary—" That's when he heard it. Laughter. High-pitched, manic, getting closer. Hyenas. Michael raised the binoculars again, scanning the tree line. 7 of them, emerging from the acacia shadows, spread out in a hunting formation. And the lioness couldn't stand. "Base, cancel that," Michael said into the radio, his voice steady despite his accelerating pulse. "I'm going in." Michael grabbed the tire iron from the back of the Land Cruiser, the closest thing to a weapon he had, and started running. The hyenas saw him immediately. They stopped 50 feet from the lioness, their heads swiveling toward this new variable in their equation. Michael kept running, making himself as loud and large as possible, waving the tire iron above his head. "Hey, get back! Go!" 3 of the hyenas retreated slightly. 4 held their ground. The alpha female, identifiable by her size and the torn left ear, opened her mouth and laughed. Not a threat, a calculation. 1 human, 7 of us. Wounded lion can't fight back. We can wait. Michael reached the lioness and dropped to his knees beside her. Up close, the damage was worse than he'd thought. Her right hind leg was caught in a wire snare, the kind poachers set for antelope, but that occasionally trapped larger animals. The wire had cut through fur and skin, embedding itself in the muscle. Blood had dried in dark streaks down her leg. But she wasn't weak from the snare. She was weak from trying to escape it. The dirt around her was torn up in a 10-foot radius. She'd fought for hours, maybe days, twisting and pulling until her leg was shredded and her body was exhausted beyond function. Michael touched her shoulder gently. "Hey, I'm here. I'm going to help you." The lioness's amber eye opened, focused on him. She didn't growl, didn't try to bite, just watched. Calculating. Are you another threat, or are you different? Michael pulled wire cutters from his belt, standard equipment for dealing with poacher traps. "This is going to hurt," he said quietly, "but if I don't get this off you, you're dead in the next 5 minutes." He positioned the cutters on the wire closest to her. That's when the hyena laughed again. Closer now. Michael looked up. The pack had tightened the circle. They were 20 feet away, watching, waiting for the moment when the human's attention was fully on the wounded lion. Then they'd rush. Michael made a decision that violated every safety protocol he'd ever learned. He sat down. Fully. On the ground, legs crossed, positioning himself between the lioness and the hyenas, making himself vulnerable. Making himself bait. "You want her?" Michael called out to the pack. "You go through me first." The alpha female tilted her head. Is this human insane? Michael reached behind him with one hand and began cutting the wire, his eyes never leaving the hyenas. The cutters bit into the metal. Once, twice. The wire snapped. The lioness's leg jerked free. She made a sound half groan, half growl as blood flow returned to the damaged limb. Michael dropped the cutters and gripped the tire iron with both hands. "Come on, you need to get up," he whispered to the lioness. She didn't move. Too weak, too exhausted. The wire was gone, but her body had nothing left. The hyenas began to advance. Michael stood up slowly, tire iron raised. The hyenas stopped. Standoff. Michael's mind was running calculations at lightning speed. 7 hyenas, 1 tire iron, 1 exhausted lioness who can't fight, no backup, 40 miles from base. The math didn't favor him, but math wasn't everything. Michael had watched hyena behavior for 2 decades. He understood their psychology. They were opportunistic scavengers with predatory capabilities. They operated on risk-reward analysis. High reward, a full-grown lioness was worth moderate risk. But high uncertainty? That changed the equation. Michael needed to become unpredictable. He took 1 step forward, toward the pack. The hyenas shuffled backwards slightly. Humans don't advance. Humans retreat or stay still. Michael took another step. "I said, get back!" He swung the tire iron hard against a nearby rock. The clang echoed across the clearing. 2 more hyenas retreated, but the alpha female held her ground. She was larger, more experienced, less afraid. She knew wounded lions. She knew exhausted prey. And she knew patience. If we wait, the human will leave. They always leave. Michael looked back at the lioness. She had lifted her head slightly, watching him, watching the hyenas. Her amber eyes were calculating something Michael couldn't read. Then she did something that changed everything. She growled, not at Michael, at the hyenas. It was weak, barely audible. Her body had nothing behind it, but it was defiance. "I'm not dead yet." The alpha female's ears flattened. The pack had been banking on an easy meal, a dying lioness who couldn't fight back. But this lioness was growling, and this human was standing between them and their prey, acting like he had backup coming. The alpha female made her decision. She barked once, a signal to the pack, and they retreated. Not far, 20 meters into the tree line, watching, waiting. Michael didn't relax. "They're not gone," he said quietly, more to himself than the lioness. "They're waiting for me to leave." He pulled out his radio. "Base, this is Chen. I need an emergency veterinary team at grid 479 immediately. Adult lioness, severe snare injury, hyena pack in the area. I'm staying with her until you arrive." The response crackled back after 5 seconds. "Chen, protocol says." "I know what protocol says. I'm not leaving her." Silence on the radio. Then, "ETA 90 minutes. Do not engage the hyenas." "Copy that." Michael sat back down beside the lioness. 90 minutes. The sun was climbing, temperature rising, no shade, no water, and 7 hyenas waiting in the tree line. Michael looked at the lioness. "We're going to need to trust each other," he said. The lioness's eye fixed on him, and for the first time, she blinked. Slowly, deliberately. The feline's slow blink, the gesture of trust. Michael felt something tighten in his chest. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay, I've got you." The first 30 minutes were the hardest. The hyenas tested them 3 times. Each time 1 or 2 would venture closer, circling, probing for weakness. Each time Michael stood up, shouted, banged the tire iron against rocks. Each time they retreated. But they were learning that he was alone, that he had no weapon beyond a piece of metal, that his voice was getting hoarse, that his movements were getting slower as the heat climbed toward 40 degrees Celsius. The lioness hadn't moved in 20 minutes. Michael checked her breathing, shallow but steady. He had no water to give her, no medical supplies beyond the wire cutters he'd already used. All he could offer was his presence. "You know," Michael said, his voice raw, "I'm an engineer. I fix solar panels. I'm not supposed to be doing this." The lioness's ear twitched. "My wife thinks I have the safest job in conservation, sitting in trucks, checking equipment, no danger." He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "She's going to kill me if she finds out about this." The lioness exhaled heavily. It almost sounded like a sigh. "You have cubs?" Michael asked. He didn't know why he was talking to her. Maybe the heat, maybe the stress, maybe because the alternative was silence and the growing certainty that 90 minutes was a very long time. The lioness's eye opened fully, locked onto his. "Yeah," Michael said quietly. "You do. I can see it." Lactating females had a different body composition, slightly swollen mammary glands, a particular kind of exhaustion. Somewhere out there, cubs were waiting for her to come back. "How long have you been here?" Michael wondered aloud. 1 day? 2? The condition of the wound suggested at least 36 hours, maybe more. 36 hours of fighting the wire, of exhaustion, of knowing her cubs were alone, and still she'd kept fighting. Michael understood then. She wasn't weak because the snare had beaten her. She was weak because she'd refused to give up until her body had absolutely nothing left. "I'm going to make sure you get back to them," Michael said. "I promise." The lioness's eye closed, but her breathing remained steady. Trust. 60 minutes in, the alpha female made her move. She didn't approach directly. Instead, she sent 2 younger males, subordinate pack members, expendable if things went wrong. They came from opposite sides, forcing Michael to divide his attention. Michael stood, tire iron ready, turning his body to keep both in his peripheral vision. "Don't," he warned. The hyenas kept coming, slow, testing. The one on the left lunged first. Not a real attack, just a feint to see how Michael would react. Michael swung the tire iron hard, missed by inches. The hyena on the right darted forward while Michael was off balance, straight toward the lioness. Michael spun and threw the tire iron. It hit the ground 2 feet in front of the hyena with a loud clang. The hyena yelped and retreated. But now Michael had no weapon. The tire iron was 10 feet away, between him and the hyenas. Michael did the only thing he could think of. He charged, screaming, arms wide, running straight at the alpha female with nothing but audacity and desperation. The pack scattered. Not far, just enough. Michael grabbed the tire iron, spun around, and sprinted back to the lioness. His heart was hammering. His hands were shaking. That had been stupid, reckless, if they'd called his bluff. "Base, where's my backup?" Michael gasped into the radio. 30 minutes out." 30 minutes. Michael looked at the hyenas. They were regrouping. The alpha female was pacing now, agitated. She'd realized something. The human was alone. The human was exhausted. The human had 1 weapon and no reinforcements. And time was on her side. All she had to do was wait for him to make a mistake. 20 minutes later, the lioness stopped breathing. For 5 terrible seconds, Michael thought she'd died. Then her chest rose, fell, rose again, but weaker now, slower. She was fading. Michael pulled out his radio one more time. "Base, the lioness is critical. I need that team now." 15 minutes, Jen. Hold on." 15 minutes. Michael looked at the hyenas. They sensed it too. The change, the weakening. They were tightening the circle again. Michael made a calculation. The Land Cruiser was 30 meters away, engine running, windows up, safe. He could get there in 10 seconds, lock the doors, wait for the vet team to arrive. The lioness would die, but he would live. That was the logical choice, the safe choice, the choice his wife would want him to make, the choice his training demanded. Michael looked at the lioness. Her eye was open, watching him. She knew. She knew he was calculating, knew he was considering leaving, and she wasn't judging him for it. "You've done more than anyone would. You freed me. You stayed. If you leave now, I understand." Michael thought about her cubs, somewhere out there, waiting. If she died, they died. "I'm not going anywhere," Michael said. The lioness's eye closed again. Not surrender, relief. The veterinary Land Rover appeared on the horizon at 78 minutes. Michael had never been so happy to see another vehicle in his life. Dr. Sarah Kamani jumped out before the vehicle fully stopped, medical kit in hand. "Status," she called out, running toward them. "Wire snare removed. Severe tissue damage to right hind leg. Dehydrated. Exhausted. Hyenas waiting in the tree line." Sarah dropped to her knees beside the Lioness, already pulling out a stethoscope. "You stayed with her for 90 minutes? "Didn't have a choice." Sarah listened to the Lioness's heartbeat. "She's borderline shock. We need to sedate and transport immediately." She prepared a syringe while her assistant, a young man named David, set up a portable IV. "The hyenas are going to rush the moment we try to move her," Michael said. "Then we make noise." Sarah pulled an air horn from her kit and handed it to Michael. "When I say go, you use that. David, get the transport crate ready. Chen, you're staying with us until she's loaded." Michael nodded. Sarah administered the sedative. The Lioness's breathing slowed further. "She's under. Let's move. Now." David brought the crate. Sarah and Michael lifted the Lioness. She was heavier than Michael expected, easily 120 kilograms of dead weight. The hyenas saw the movement. They rushed. Michael hit the air horn. The sound was deafening, piercing, designed to scare elephants away from crop fields. The hyenas scattered like they'd been hit. Sarah, David, and Michael loaded the Lioness into the crate in under 30 seconds. The Land Rover's door slammed shut. The hyenas regrouped in the tree line, pacing, frustrated. Michael looked back at them through the window. "Better luck next time," he muttered. Sarah was already working, cleaning the wound, administering antibiotics, setting up fluids. "She's gonna make it," Sarah said. "You saved her life." Michael leaned back against the seat, suddenly exhausted. "She saved mine first," he said quietly. 3 days later, Sarah called Michael at his office. "You need to come to the sanctuary." "Is she okay?" "She's fine. Just come see." Michael drove the 90 kilometers to the wildlife sanctuary, his mind running through possibilities. Sarah met him at the entrance with a smile that told him nothing. "Follow me." She led him to a large recovery enclosure. Inside, the Lioness was lying in the shade, her right leg bandaged but already bearing weight. And beside her, nursing contentedly, were 4 cubs. Michael stopped walking. "We found them yesterday," Sarah explained, "about 2 kilometers from where you found her. They were hiding in a termite mound, exactly where a mother would leave them for safety." The cubs were maybe 6 weeks old enough to survive a few days alone, young enough to still desperately need their mother. "She was trying to get back to them," Michael said. "For probably 2 days. Caught in that snare, fighting it, exhausting herself, and the whole time she knew they were alone." Michael watched the cubs tumble over each other, completely unaware of how close they'd come to dying. The Lioness lifted her head and looked directly at Michael. And she did it again. The slow blink. "She recognizes you," Sarah said quietly. "We sat together for 90 minutes. She learned my scent." "It's more than that." Sarah handed him a folder. "I reviewed the camera footage from the perimeter fence. Michael, she didn't just wander into that snare." "What do you mean?" "The snare was set 3 meters inside our fence line. Poachers have been getting bolder, setting traps in protected areas. But look at the tracks." Sarah showed him photos. "She deliberately crossed into the protected zone, even though lions avoid fences instinctively. She knew this area was monitored. She knew humans patrol here." Michael stared at the photos. She got herself trapped on purpose? Not on purpose, but she chose to hunt near the fence because she knew if something went wrong, someone might find her. It was a calculated risk. Michael looked back at the Lioness. She was gambling that a human would come, that they'd help instead of hurt. And you proved her right. 2 weeks later, Sarah called again. She's ready for release. Michael arrived at dawn. The Lioness was in a transport crate, alert and healthy. The wound was healing cleanly. She could walk without limping. The cubs were in a separate crate, mewing softly. "We're releasing them back to her original territory," Sarah explained. "Away from the fence, away from the poacher traps." "Will she be safe?" "Rangers arrested 3 men last week. They had wire snares, maps of the area. They won't be setting traps for a long time." The convoy drove deep into the conservation area, to a region with good cover and abundant prey. When they opened the crate, the lioness stepped out cautiously. She scanned the area, tested the air. Then she looked back at Michael, standing by the vehicle. For a long moment, they looked at each other. Michael thought about those 90 minutes, the heat, the hyenas, the choice. The lioness took 3 steps toward him. Sarah tensed. "Michael." "It's okay." The lioness stopped 5 feet away. She sat down, and she did it one more time. The slow blink. "Thank you. I won't forget." Then she stood, walked back to her cubs as they were released, and led them into the tall grass. Michael watched until they disappeared. "You okay?" Sarah asked. "Yeah," Michael said. I didn't think it would be this hard to say goodbye." "You saved a mother and 4 cubs. That's not goodbye. That's legacy." 6 months later, a camera trap captured an image that Sarah sent to Michael. 5 lions at a waterhole. An adult female with a distinctive scar on her right hind leg. 4 adolescent cubs, healthy and strong, thriving. Michael printed the photo and pinned it above his desk, next to his engineering diagrams and solar panel schematics. A reminder. Some choices can't be calculated in advance. Some decisions require you to sit down in the dirt, make yourself vulnerable, and trust that the math will work out. Michael Chen still didn't believe in fate, but he believed in choices. And sometimes the choice to stay, even when logic says to run, is the only calculation that matters. If this story reminded you that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the choice to stay when every calculation says to leave, subscribe to our channel. We share stories like this every week, where ordinary people face impossible moments, where seconds define lives, and where the wild teaches us what it means to be worthy of trust. See you in the next one. If this story reminded you that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the choice to stay when every calculation says to leave, subscribe to our channel. We share stories like this every week, where ordinary people face impossible moments, where seconds define lives, and where the wild teaches us what it means to be worthy of trust. See you in the next one.